for Witches of the Moon, and this week's subject is reincarnation and the afterlife. And I'm not going to be on camera today because I'm a little bit under the weather, so I thought I would put a nice little setup together, which I really like it actually, this little setup. I could leave it like that. But yeah, so this is going to be an interesting subject for me because it's not something I can give any definite answers or information on. So I'm going to start off by saying I saw a quote yesterday, and it said it was a far greater measure of strength and not weakness to admit that you do not know all the answers. And I came across this quote after I actually watched Blythe's video yesterday first, which I don't normally do. And I was a little bit apprehensive about this video because I was like, I don't know how much information I can really relay. I can relay my ideas and my opinions and some of my personal experiences, because I have had a few experiences which sort of tie into this idea, and I can share what I believe. But I think the issue of basically death and what happens after death is something which is basically you're never going to be able to prove, because it is just one of those subjects, those issues which a lot of human beings are very afraid of. Or it's a lot of the reasons why people turn to spirituality, as well as life meaning. There's, wanting to know whether there is life after death and a belief in life after death. And it can be a tricky subject. It's a bit personal, it's a bit based on belief. There's nothing I can really show for, you can't prove it, and I can just say what I believe. And so that's what this video is basically going to be, my experiences and my beliefs with the subject. So I think we'll start off by saying what I believe in and what I've always believed in. I've always believed in reincarnation, right from being very, very, very young. I always saw spirits as a very young child as well, which may have had something to do with it. But reincarnation makes more sense to me than anything else, because I don't feel that we can fulfill everything our soul needs to know in one lifetime. I've frequently say it's all about the journey, like in life, it's more about the journey, it's about taking steps, it's about making those mistakes and falling over and getting back up again and trying to make yourself a bit better today than you were yesterday, and trying to improve yourself even more tomorrow, and trying to look at it as baby steps. Because if you try and look at the overall picture of where I am now, whereas I want to be, sometimes it can get overwhelming. So I apply that belief in what life should be to how I believe the soul path should be, the soul journey. And I believe that we experience many different lives and have to overcome many different lessons in order to ascend and become one with source and spirit and deity again. I can't say whether I believe we have the choice to keep coming back and keep learning. I don't know. I would like to think that would be the case. Perhaps your soul knows on its energy level whether or not it needs to keep learning a lesson. And I definitely believe that in certain lifetimes you will keep coming across the same obstacles until you find a way of overcoming them. Absolutely. You will keep running into the same people until you have learnt what you need to know from them. Absolutely. And I've had a very strong inclination with a few people in my life that I have had past lives where I have seen them before. As I've had dreams where I see that person in a role whereby they're not obviously in this life. One of my exes I dreamt was a monk in a previous life. And he was not a very nice guy in when I met him in a previous life, I don't think. And I had a very strong belief that I had interacted with him before. And it was interesting because the matter of spirituality and spiritual conflicts came up again in this lifetime. and I don't know whether I allowed him to overrule me in the last lifetime, but I didn't in this one, and hence he's an ex. I know that I have probably met my sister, my middle sister, in previous lives, just because me and her have such a bond, and it's actually a physical energy bond connecting us, and we excuse me, we definitely have met in previous lives. So I definitely believe that we have lived many lives, just because I think honestly that it takes more than one lifetime to learn everything that a soul needs to know. There's so much information in one lifetime that you're not going to be able to absorb. I've said this before, you know, I don't think you can gather all the information there is to learn out there in one lifetime, and that's why people specialize in all areas, you know. That's why they pick one spirituality, one spiritual path, whatever resonates with them in this lifetime. Why they pick certain scholar or research areas to research. So say someone has an interest in languages in this lifetime, or interest in history in this lifetime, whatever, and they specialize in that. And I definitely believe in past lives and reincarnation. It's actually very topical and very relevant to me right now, because I've started to explore that in a little bit more depth. I did a past life reading for myself last week with the tarot, after somebody had contacted me and I was starting to get to know them, and they actually emailed me and talked to me a little bit about Morrigan and this, that and the other, and they actually emailed me a past life tarot spread, and I was like, I took it as a sign to do it, and I did it, and I basically think I was in some kind of compound. I was a mother. I died in childbirth, I think, and I was perhaps a little bit restricted in that lifetime, in my last lifetime, I feel. I mean, I've had visions, dreams of a few other ones, and a couple recently which are pretty private for the time being, that were really, really vivid and really, really emotional. And I can say that I did visualise and saw my death in that one first, and I was like, oh my god, which it overwhelmed me with emotion when I meditated on it, and it just came to me, and it was very interesting. And there are a lot of threads in my life right now which is pulling from past life experiences and starting to understand sort of innate reactions to things. Like perhaps you react to certain situations and you're not quite sure why, or you have certain preferences and you're not quite sure where they've come from. For example, you know, you have a bad feeling about this situation, but nothing in this lifetime has taught you that. So you're like, I don't know where I get that from. And I get this has just reminded me, there's a certain kind of like marching music that fills me with a sense of terror, and I have no idea why. And I can't explain on camera what kind of music it is until I hear it, and my heart just goes, and I feel like running, and I can't tell you where that's come from. And maybe that's a past life fear of war, of marching, of something like that. I don't know. I have a feeling that I could go into it, but I have a feeling it might have been a traumatic past life. So we will leave that for the time being. If that is something I come across in the future, I may or may not decide to share it. Obviously, this is a hugely personal video, and experiencing your past lives and all this sort of thing is incredibly personal. Incredibly personal. I can't say what I believe the afterlife to be. I think there are processes involved. I think there are journeys involved. This is why I don't call, or I don't invoke spirits at Samhain. I've always felt very, very strongly about at Samhain, and I can't tell you why. This is just how I feel about it, and there are different opinions on this subject, and everybody is free to their interpretation of what they want to do. So what I usually do at Samhain is I allow the invitation to be there for any positive spirits who wish to be honoured at Samhain. And technically my main thrust of the idea at Samhain, which is the time of the dead, in case anyone's like, what are you on about, to honour the spirits of my ancestors more than to invoke them, call them. And I do this because I honestly believe there is a process after life, after death, that they may be somewhere on their journey where they don't need to be bothered, basically. And you know, if I was a spirit, and I think if one of my future descendants called on me, I would feel that pull, and I would feel I want to know what was going on, and it might sort of derail me a bit from where I was supposed to be on my journey. So what I do at Samhain, as I say, you know, anybody who is free to, anybody who is positive and means me only good energies and goodwill, I honour you, and you know, in that respect. But I would never come here, invoke, yada yada. I wouldn't do that anyway, because I think you kind of, by embracing it in a negative fashion, like get here now, you are inviting negativity into your space, which you don't want with spirits, to be honest. I grew up seeing spirits, and as a child it never bothered me at all. It never frightened me until my parents basically filled my head with horror stories and scared the living crap out of me. And then I had negative experiences because they scared me about the situation. And then I closed it all down until a bit later on. And even now I'm very hesitant, because sometimes you get a lot of messages all in one go, and a lot of spirits all in one go, and you're like, I need a break. just for a bit. And all honour to spirits, and all reverence maintained. And it never frightened me growing up. You know, I saw spirits, I knew there was a guy with red hair there, and I think it might have been my deceased uncle. Looking back on it, I didn't know about him as a child, and I freaked my parents out when I told them, so I think that's what that was about. And I saw a Victorian lady who didn't really interact with anybody, but she was around, and then there were goings on in that house. That house was a very negative space. But because I've had that situation and I've seen things as a child and growing up, that's never been a question of doubt in my mind. I've always been clairvoyant, and my other abilities, my clairaudience and my clairsentience, have developed. My clairsentience was probably always there, but it was just less at the forefront than the voyance, and the audience has come later. Both my middle sister and my mother had clairaudience, so it's a family thing, that experiencing the spirit realm. And experiencing the spirit realm in such a fashion was one of the connections that drew me to realising that the Morrigan is my patron goddess. Because she, in one of her aspects, and in quite a lot of her mythos, is connected to death and spirits activity and looking after the souls of the dead, reincarnation. In every aspect of her there is an element of that, and it's something, and one of the reasons why a lot of people actually are quite frightened of her. However, the idea of her escorting the spirits from death into the next realm has never frightened me, and as it happens, death has never frightened me either, and I realise I'm weird. It feels natural to me. It just feels like a part of life, completely connected. You can't have one without the other. There is the sadness of having lost someone, and I understand that pain. There is the mourning period of having lost someone in the physical realm, but I don't honestly believe that we ever truly lose those that we love. I think they are with us in a spiritual sense, connected to us until we ourselves pass on. Will we see them as we pass on for a period of time before we reincarnate? Very possibly. I can't give any definite answers to these things. Like I said, I don't have the answers. I've just started exploring past life regression and interpretation and visualization myself. Obviously, I have a close relationship with the goddess who has strong ties of death, of reincarnation, of guiding spirits to the other world, and therefore I feel the love. This is going to sound bizarre, right? But I feel the love aspect of the death goddess. And in the picture bit in front of you, you can see two skulls, and one of them is rose quartz, and the rose quartz skull I was guided to buy first. And I felt a bit morbid buying skulls at first. I was like, is this a little bit morbid? But in the end, I was like, no, it makes perfect sense. And I have glittery skulls on my Morrigan altar from Halloween decorations, which I kept 4 of them out. And the idea is there is a beautiful side, a loving side of the death aspect. It can release from pain. It can release the soul into a beautiful place, into the next experience. And whereas we are afraid of losing our physical self, our physical identity in this lifetime, there is beauty to be had in it by connecting and going on. There is the sadness of those that love. In a way, that's a reflection of just how much they love the person. So although they are in pain and they are mourning, it is an outward show of just how much they love the person in life. So there's that balance. I think that's what it is for me. There is a balance in everything, and that is the balance in death into the afterlife and the reincarnation side of things. I realise I sound like a weirdo. I realise that some people will be like, I do not understand what you are on about at all. You sound a little bit morbid. But there is love connected with it. And, you know, in popular culture, people connect the primal energies to death, don't they? You connect the primal energies of sexuality and death. And humans are fascinated with that sort of thing. You only have to take the subculture of vampirism, which is all about sex, death, and other primal forces, to see that humans are obsessed with these things, which are basically primal driving forces. And obviously, following the Morrigan, she has those primal aspects to herself, the sexual side of herself, the death aspect. I mean, there's 100 different aspects of the Morrigan, but for this video, those two coincide, because life, death, and rebirth are all connected. They are all a cycle, and sexuality is obviously the life and beginning of new life aspect to human beings, of feeling alive, of feeling connected to another human being, hopefully in healthy relationships at least. Generalized. I realise it's a generalisation, but in love making, let's say, then there is something very real there about the loving side, and then the death aspect is just the follow-on. To me, it's just the cycle. So it's just a perfectly natural, balanced form of life. So I think I've covered everything. I think I can give a reasonable discussion for. It's not an explanation, I understand. It's not this is this, this is this, this is this. And it's not one of those subjects I think I can be that way about. It's quite an abstract thing, because we just cannot say for definite. We can say, oh, I believe this and I believe that, and people can disagree and say, I believe this, I believe that. But death and rebirth and past lives and the afterlife are just matters of belief, and I don't think there's any way of telling one person they are right or wrong about this situation at all. So I think I'm going to leave it there for this week, and many blessings.